Hi, everybody. I'm George, and this is the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest at least. And today's guest is an IT consultant by day, but a true crime, horror, and reality TV lover by night, plus a podcaster with some irons in the fire. Laura Haase is here. How's it going?
Hi, George. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. So, as I just said, you're a big horror fan.
Yes.
And part of what makes this show so interesting to me is hearing about how people got into horror. So how did it start for you?
For me, I think when I was younger, there were like certain things that I was terrified of, like roller coasters, like horror movies. And it was not that I had ever experienced them, but just the like not knowing that scared me.
Right.
And then the first horror movie I remember watching was the original Halloween. And it was like in the fall, my friend and I were watching it in her basement. And she is like a total scaredy cat. So she was terrified. And I was like laughing at her being so scared.
Right.
Because I was like, well, yeah, you can kind of see what's going to happen. Right.
Right. That can kind of go either way, though, because sometimes when you're with someone who's really scared, it can make you really scared as well.
Yeah.
Or it can go the way it went with you, where you're like, oh, like, I'm not this scared. Like, it's not this big a deal, and make you feel a lot better. So even that reaction can go so many different ways, and people react so differently to horror.
Yeah. And so I was probably in high school, or like maybe in like 8th grade. So then like by the time I got to high school, I started watching it more and more, usually with like groups of friends.
Right.
And then I like fell down the path where I would just watch horror movies by myself, and I like appreciating them for what they are and not like truly terrified.
Right.
Although there's certain ones that will get to me for sure.
Right. When we first were chatting about doing the show, you tossed out a couple of ideas for movies, and they were kind of all over the spectrum of horror. So I'm curious if there is sort of a subgenre that you gravitate to more than others.
That's a hard one because I feel like I don't gravitate one more than the other. I think there's like certain movies, like I'll look at slasher films and I'm like, no, I don't like those. But then there'll be a couple in that category that I really like. And so then I'm like, well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I do find things that feel more like they could be based in reality. So like the paranormal stuff is enjoyable, but definitely like the ones based more in reality like freak me out more and feel more real.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm the same way, you know, something like The Strangers is much scarier to me than something that's ghost related because, you know, I don't believe in ghosts, but I sure as hell believe in somebody with a knife.
Right, exactly. And I mean, like, there will be movies that I'll watch alone and then I'm like, all right, I got to take a shower and go to bed. And I like find myself like peering out of my shower curtain. Like somebody could come into my place right now, which is usually like that external, you know, force, not necessarily like a ghost or paranormal thing.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that you sort of mentioned that invasion of privacy, that feeling of someone sort of coming after you and possibly watching you based on the movie that we're talking about today, which is 2004's Saw. This movie was directed by James Wan, who would go on to launch both Insidious and The Conjuring, while also dabbling outside of horror. And it was also written by Leigh Whannell, who also worked with Wan on Insidious and would go on to direct his own movies with Upgrade and the recent Invisible Man.
Actually, I didn't know that he directed Insidious when I like suggested Saw. And so then when I was like looking up about the movie because we were doing this podcast, I was like, oh my God, I love that movie. It's cool that he also did those, but they're totally different styles of movies.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen The Invisible Man yet, though I've heard really good things. So I'll have to check it out.
It is interesting that they're able to kind of diversify themselves in that way. You know, a lot of directors sort of fall into a rhythm and they start putting out the same sort of thing over and over again. And so when a director is able to break out of that, it's always pretty impressive to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like, I mean, granted, those movies came out probably at least 5-7 years apart. I don't know when Insidious came out, but, you know, things were different, cinematography wise, but just overall, like storyline, plot, type of movie, it was like completely different. So
right. One of the things that's really interesting to me about Saw as well is that it's one of the most successful introductions of a horror icon in recent years. The new version of It and Pennywise took off a little bit as well, but you know, Pennywise doesn't have 8 movies.
Right. Well, Well, that was the thing. Like, I have to admit, I haven't seen every single Saw movie because at a certain point they turn into a genre in and of itself.
Right.
But like the amount of success that came out of like this single horror movie is like hard to find any other horror movie or other maybe than the Fast and Furious that had that many sequels.
Right. It's really impressive. And what's also impressive is that equally iconic to Jigsaw and Tobin Bell as John Kramer, which we are going full spoilers here. This movie is 16 years old. But his sort of iconography is as I mean, I'm using the word icon too much here, but it's the stuff that he uses is as much a part of what makes Saw
right.
as the killer.
Right.
The pig mask, the other traps, and the reverse bear trap in particular, and Billy the Puppet. It's all part of this terrifying environment that Kramer brings people into.
Yeah.
And the fact that there are so many individual pieces of the movie that stuck out to people, I think is really indicative of why this movie struck a chord and why it's such a vital piece of filmmaking for so many horror fans.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, like, as I was watching it, the second or third time around, but for this podcast and, like, taking notes, there were elements, too, of it that were, like, call-outs or, like, just kind of paying tribute to other horror movies or other. So, and I don't know if we're getting into it yet, but it's in the trailer where the photographer is taking pictures through the dark apartment and using the flash to kind of light it up. And it reminded me of the night vision goggle scene in, like, Silence of the Lambs, where he, and so, like, those simple little things of, like, playing in darkness, it's not an original idea, but, like, bringing that together in the movie that they, like, ultimately created. And if you are a horror fan, you kind of, like, notice those things as,
right.
Hey, that, like, reminds me of something else from another movie.
Yeah, it feels very obvious that they are horror fans as well, which is always something that is nice to see when it doesn't feel like they're embarrassed to be making a horror movie.
Yeah, and using a creepy doll like Jigsaw, like
right.
every like 80s horror movie has like creepy kids or creepy dolls or, it in and of itself kind of being that clown figure that people are afraid of.
Right. Well, I mean, plus Billy the Puppet, not only are there various creepy dolls throughout horror, but it's also a specific reference to the Giallo movie Deep Red by Dario Argento, which James Wan is a huge fan of Dario Argento's work. The black gloves on the unseen killer that Tobin Bell has is another Dario Argento staple.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so it's nice that he sort of includes these homages to the things that they love, so sort of being like, yeah, we're building on the shoulders of giants. Without them, we wouldn't be here, and they were hoping to and did truly establish a bedrock to build an entire genre off of, even if it did sort of become a little flanderized in that
right.
it became just about the gore. But it's easy to see, especially in this first one, like
right.
what was appealing to people about this movie.
Yeah, and I think just the general popularity that it had, like being a horror movie, it was a small budget. I looked at it was like $1.2 million, and at the box office
really
it was $103 million. So, every so often there's a big horror movie released on Halloween or a Friday the 13th, and it gets the people who aren't hardcore to go to the theater. And so paying tribute to all of those other movies and directors, non-horror lovers don't pick up on that, but like get to experience that and just like have an appreciation, I think, for horror movies, which can so easily be written off as not great film.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And it's interesting that you brought up the budget. I definitely want to talk about that because this is one of the most profitable films of all time, especially within the specific genre of horror. Like you said, it grossed $103 million. It opened up in 2,315 theaters, and its opening weekend grossed $18.2 million. And like you said, its budget was only 1.2. So, James Wan, really smart, gambled on his own talent, and he took no upfront salary, and so he took a percentage on the movie instead. A smart move on his part.
Absolutely.
But it's particularly interesting that not only was this successful, it was successful going up against other horror. The Grudge came out the same time, and so it's not like people didn't have options, but this was something new. It had sort of elements of Seven in terms of the
I was getting major seven vibes the whole time.
Yeah, but what's really cool about it, and I think that it's a really great distinguisher, is that it's sort of telling the story of this psychopath, not from the perspective of the police chasing him, but from the perspective of the victims, where like you see the police doing their thing, but really the people that you're with the whole time are the victims, and feeling that sort of isolation and that desperation that they're in the middle of is so intense and so interesting, and definitely part of what makes this a unique movie. And, you know, like I said, you're spending this time with these characters. The movies have gone on to get this reputation for just grotesque, gleeful violence, but that's pretty far removed from what the first movie is, where it's really more about this tension that they're going through. And there are interludes of shocking stuff, but that tension is really what the movie's all about, and they created it for the actors by filming in chronological order, so they were actually going through it, and very fast, because, like we said, they had a super small budget, so you got to really pack it in. The film's pre-production was only 5 days, and so they shot, and they shot and cut at the same time over its 18-day shooting period. All of the bathroom scenes were shot in only 6 days.
Yeah. Well, that bathroom was gross looking. I can't imagine being there.
Yeah, they're like, we're trying to get out of here as soon as possible. That 6 days was longer than they wanted. But yeah, like the rehearsal takes are what you're seeing on the screen. Like you gotta move fast. I'm curious what you think about John Kramer as a villain in terms of like not being a very intimidating person based on his physicality, which is so often what draws people to a horror villain. You know, Whannell, when he was coming up with the idea for Kramer, he was spending time in a neurology ward for anxiety and headaches, and he sort of like reflected on his own mortality. And so this character and having a brain tumor and having just a few years left to live and you know, nothing left to lose, that sort of desperation driving someone who is, you know, not the most imposing figure to sort of apply other methods. I'm curious what you think about him as a villain.
Spoilers, like you said, but like the fact that you don't really know who he is until like the end, essentially. So there's this kind of villain that nobody knows who this person is. And I think, you know, my love of true crime kind of comes in here of like I like reading about different serial killers because more often than not, they're not these, you know, obvious people. They're these people who hide in plain sight and like can in their own sociopathic ways convince people that they're not evil or how could they possibly be responsible for something like this? I think it plays to that character of this guy who it wouldn't be this guy. And that's the thing that makes it even more scary is because the obvious person isn't actually the person that they should be looking at. And it's kind of that misdirection just based off of this. I think honestly, it's a really good villain. And I think, again, to the point of like, I like the realness of certain horror movies. Like that feels more real knowing like what I know about these different predators, essentially. As
opposed to having like Jason Voorhees lying on the ground there.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, too, like even the character, like if you look at Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lambs, like you see these old white dudes, you're like, oh, they're harmless.
No,
not harmless.
Definitely not. So before we get into the actual movie, I want to talk about the production credit. There are 2 logos that I feel perfectly capture their oeuvre. And the first one is the Neversoft logo, since swallowed up by Infinity Ward and Activision, gone but not forgotten. And and the Twisted Pictures logo. Yeah. With a metal spike separating the 2 words, and they're just covered in barbed wire, and it shows up for this movie, and you're immediately like, I understand the movie I'm going to see. Just from the production credit. It's like, it's grimy, it's industrial, and it's so reflective of the movie. I think it's such a great production credit. Yeah, like the grunginess of it, and then, I mean, like, immediately you're thrown into a dark room. Yeah. And like you're in it. And I think like so many horror movies, especially like the older, you know, campy type horror movies, you've got this build up, everything's great, everything's happy, and then everything goes wrong. And that's not at all the scene they set. No time to relax with this.
In it, and you're sink or swim.
Literally sink or swim. So it starts off, and Adam Stanheight, who's played by Leigh Whannell, who's the writer for the movie, he wakes up submerged in this tub, which truly would probably be like the scariest thing in the world, to just wake up and be drowning.
Yes. Yeah.
And so obviously he flails around while trying to get up, and he finally gets some air, but he finds that his ankle is chained to a pipe. And while he's kicking around, obviously he accidentally kicks away the plug, and the key that we see gets like at the very, very beginning gets sucked down the drain. Yep. This doesn't really come back into play until the very end, but like when it all clicks together, you're just like, oh no, the key.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're in that sheer panic, and I think, you know, as the outsider, it's so quick to judge it, right? But like,
and you're also not even sure what it is either. You're like, oh, what?
The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, he pulled the plug out. Why did they pay attention to that? And then, you know, it comes back around, and then obviously watching it again, you're like, oh man, wish I could tell you.
And so he freaks out very reasonably, in my opinion, and he's feeling his way around the room when he discovers that across from him, similarly chained, is oncologist Lawrence Gordon, played by Cary Elwes. And they do such a good job, I think, of communicating the disorientation that they're feeling. And it's something I think is really important. The camera is right up in their face. It's swaying. They're shifting focus, and there's like some after images. This sort of like blurry movement and stuff is something that's really iconic to the Saw franchise. Yeah. And it sort of gets abused later in like later installments, but I really like it, especially in this movie. I think that they use it really well here. And although I assumed it had something to do with shot exposure time, there was very little information about the way that this was like actually put together. And so what I did was I just reached out directly to the movie's editor. And
did you really?
And so I talked to Kevin Grutert, and he was... Not only is he the director of my second favorite Saw movie, Saw 6, but he was also kind enough to provide me with confirmation.
That's so nice.
Yeah, so shout out to Kevin. He said most of the blurry stuff is done in camera and in editing. Often we'd stop and start the film cameras to get flash frames that were blurry and overexposed in random ways, and we'd toss those in to get interesting effects slotted into the other stuff. So that's how they accomplished this. I could not find this information anywhere on the internet. So hopefully if anyone was wondering, now they know.
That's a fun tidbit.
Yeah, so there you go. Thanks again, Kevin. And finally, when they come to and their disorientation stops, they notice that in between them is a corpse holding a revolver and a micro cassette recorder. Yeah. First off,
you're in it.
Yeah, you're in it. And this dude's face is absolutely mangled, which is interesting in a way that comes back into play. But also, I really like the way that we're sort of like shown their resources here, where each thing like thuds into frame. Like we get a very specific shot of each thing that they have at their disposal. Right. When we know what they have to deal with, that's when we can start being like, okay, how are they going to get out of this? And so it's very important to sort of be like, here are your tools. What are you going to do with it?
Well, I think that's the thing, right? Like, as I was watching this, and this will come back around at the end of like why I think this is the best horror movie ever made, is like, it feels very escape room-esque, obviously a lot more horrific of a scenario.
This is the original escape room.
Right? So, like, it's literally inspired this whole business that these companies have that, like, let's lock you in a room for an hour and see if you can, like, figure out how to get out of here. And it's, like, so, you know, you as the audience member with this movie, you're immediately like feeling for these characters. You're as equally as disoriented because when the lights are out, you can't see anything. The lights come on, there's a dead guy. Like, you don't know what's going on, and you immediately start looking around the room to be like, okay, how are they going to get out of this situation? Yeah. You're feeling it and experiencing it with the character with exactly the same amount of information that they are at the get-go. And then obviously things happen that change that. But yeah, it's a really cool intro, cool experience.
Yeah. As the men discuss their predicament, we sort of get to know them a little bit. The dialogue is great here. I actually think that this is one of Whannell's strengths. I really laughed when he dismissively is like, "What are you, a surgeon?" And the answer is yes.
So I kept writing over and over again, like, Dr. Gordon, what a jerk. And like that he was like too calm with the whole thing. Yeah. Which makes his breakdown later, I guess, like that much more impactful. But yeah, like he's this intelligent, educated, like pragmatic guy, like it's cool. We'll figure it out. And then Adam's character is so much more relatable. He's like, do you not see what's happening? Like, this is effed up.
Yeah. He's freaking out.
Right.
And they're trying to figure out why they're here and not just killed. Like, if they mentioned, like, if this was about killing us, they could have just killed us. So they want something from us.
Right.
And Gordon notices the new clock on the wall, showing that someone has curated this experience for them.
How nice.
Yeah. And both men find a tape in their pockets that are marked "Play Me," although Lawrence additionally has a small key and a single bullet. So obviously he tries the key on the locks, no dice. But there's a really interesting hesitation, I think, where Adam tells Gordon to, like, throw him the key. And Gordon, like, he hesitates for a second. Like, there's this selfish desire to, like, hoard the resources and to maintain, like, he's like, this is the only power that I have in this situation. And, like, am I willing to give it up?
Yeah, I love the psychology of this movie. I mean, it's like literally everywhere, you know, like the actual killer, the people experiencing this, but you think you would be just and right in this situation. And, you know, even the fact that he discloses that he was given a bullet as well.
Yeah.
Whereas we'll see in a couple minutes, Adam does something a little bit different. And so you start to see these different personality traits of a person. And again, you insert yourself in that situation of like, well, what would I do to survive in this? Like, all you can do is trust the other person.
Yeah.
That they're going to help you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of the selfish nature of humanity is something that's explored a lot, not only in this movie through its entire storyline and Jigsaw's whole sort of modus operandi, but, you know, throughout the entire franchise, that remains a pretty serious theme throughout the whole thing. You know, in one of them, they're like, oh, there was a way for you all to get through all of the traps. You didn't actually have to kill someone for each of them, but it would have required you all to give a little bit. And this unwillingness to work together or a willingness to cooperate and hopefully get out together is something that I think is really interesting that they are exploring in this movie and throughout the entire franchise.
Yeah, for sure.
And so he does, in fact, throw him the key. Doesn't work for Adam, but it, like we said, it's interesting to see what it more represents. And Adam manages to retrieve the recorder from the corpse using his shirt and the plug from the tub. And he plays both tapes. Adam's tape urges him to escape, calling him a pathetic voyeur, while Lawrence's tape tells him to kill Adam by 6 o'clock, or his wife Allison and daughter Diana will be killed, and he'll be left to die.
Right.
He also mentions that there are ways to win hidden all around, and that the corpse in the middle of the room shot himself to rid himself of the poison in his blood. He was like, "Oh, you know, when there's that much poison in your blood."
That's a pretty good impression.
Thanks. Sometimes it's better to take the easy way out and blow your fucking head off, or whatever the hell he says. And he also says that X marks the spot for the treasure, and when he listens a little closer at the end of the tape, Gordon finds another clue hidden at the end. Very softly, it says, "Follow your heart."
Yeah, very like Beatles-esque of like, play this song in reverse and like hear that Paul is dead. Like that, like, because he picked up on it and he's like, shush, 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 and then like turns it up. It almost reminds me, sorry, tangent, but of like those TV shows where it's facial recognition or something and it's like super blurry and then they zoom in and it's like clear as day.
Enhance.
That's not how this works.
Yeah, he like turns it up and it gets like more clear instead of just getting louder. It's funny, but you're at the end, you're like, ooh, follow your heart. What the hell does that mean? And thanks to a heart smeared in poop on the tank, Adam finds a bag containing 2 hacksaws inside the toilet. And God, the look on his face when Gordon urges him to reach into the toilet is just hilarious. Like, and when he reaches his hand back out and it's just like a thick line demarcating, it's truly disgusting.
It's like halfway up his arm. It's really disgusting.
And they try to use these saws that he found to cut through the chains, but Adam's saw breaks, and he just like hurls it across the room in anger. Adam,
I can't use this anymore. It's like, you could have used it for something.
Yeah, right? Probably. He's like, there's no way this will come in handy. But again, there's sort of this relatability to Adam, and we sort of see the two the two ways that people could react to this situation, where Adam is sort of this fiery, I'm so angry at this situation, I'm lashing out, versus Dr. Gordon's much more like inward, reserved, I need to stay calm and logic my way out of this.
Which is also like suspicious in a way, like, because I think kind of going back to the beginning, the first kind of dialogue that they have is, well, how do I know, like, you don't know what's going on? Or how do I know you're not responsible for this? And they're like, I'm here just like you are. But it also, like, I think in this movie where it's so disorienting and you're trying to figure out, like, who would have put them in this situation, you kind of suspect everybody, or you suspect some level of guilt in the situation. So Dr. Gordon was definitely a shady character for me because he just was so collected the whole time.
As much as you're like, oh, I understand that he's trying to stay calm, like, you would expect something to sort of like bubble to the surface. And so it definitely,
when his daughter and wife are threatened, like, to just be like, okay.
and I think that so this is jumping ahead a little bit, but that sort of, when we see that, we sort of believe Tap and why he would be like, it's this fucking guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree that he is sort of suspect in his reserved nature.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Adam hurls this saw across the room. He breaks the mirror, and Lawrence realizes that the saws are meant to be used on their feet. Dun, dun, dun.
And we, like, also when you, like, the title of the movie, you're like, why is it called Saw? And then you open up the toilet, there's hacksaws. You're like, ah.
They said the thing. And even worse, now they just dulled the saws trying to saw the chains, so it's going to be even worse now on their legs. But I think it is a really cool moment when it dawns on him, when he realizes it and you realize it sort of at the same time, and he like is like, this can't be it, but it's really like the only thing left. I think it is a really cool moment. Yeah,
it's a cool moment, and it's also a tool used by Jigsaw, right? It's kind of that red herring of like, you could get out of this with this saw. Later we find out that there was a key that would have gotten them out of the situation.
Right.
But when somebody presents that information to you, you're like, this is the only way.
Right, yeah, definitely. They're like, if somebody was like, okay, I've locked you in here, here's a saw, I'm going to try and use the damn saw for sure.
Right, you're like, this is all I've got.
He realizes from this dawning of the idea that he has to saw his own foot off, he realizes that their captor is the Jigsaw killer, who Lawrence only knows about because he was once the suspect, or that's why he has such an intimate knowledge of him.
Yeah, it was that and the fact that piece of the mirror broke off and they realized it was a two-sided mirror. And somebody was watching them.
There's a camera behind the mirror. They break it, and they see, he looks through it, because he's like, I'm going to cut you if I get over there with this shard of glass. But when he looks through it, he notices that it's only reflective on the one side. It's see-through. They look over, they see the red blinking light, and they realize that they're being watched by someone. And so it all comes together for them. And we flash back to a previous game of Jigsaw's, where somebody died of massive blood loss after being forced to crawl through a cage of razor wire. It's really gruesome. I imagine that this probably stuck out to you as someone who likes true crime stuff, but I really like the interludes of forensic photos, kind of documenting it from other angles instead of just like relying on the camera movement. First of all, I think it's a really effective way to be like, check out this awesome makeup we did. And like, they deserve to be proud of it. It looks disgusting.
Well, and the thing that's too, like, again, like probably with the later movies in this series where you really see the people going through the trauma, this was more like, here's the aftermath.
Yeah.
And then there was like that fast cut scene where the guy's like seen crawling around, but you're not really seeing the damage being inflicted to him. So it's gruesome for sure, but it's not like, I don't know if you've seen the Human Centipede movies where it's like very like you're watching this happen and it's like amazing movie makeup that they're doing. But it's very much that like aftermath and way that they cut it that to me, it's not like cringeworthy, I have to look away.
Right. We see more and more of these previous games where, you know, people are put into ironic scenarios where the victims are forced to essentially kill themselves in a way that relates to a sin they've committed in the Jigsaw killer's eyes. And eventually, after these murders are starting to stack up, the cops find a pen light at the scene of one of these games. And Detective Tapp, who's Danny Glover, I was like, oh shit, Danny Glover.
The biggest star that they got for that movie.
And Stephen Singh, the other detective, played by Ken Lung, and they determine that this is Gordon's pen, and they interrupt him while he's in the middle of discussing his patient, John Kramer's terminal brain cancer. And
making googly eyes at an intern or resident or whatever.
Yeah, and, it's really fun when you come back to this moment and you see sort of where it all starts, and Kramer has something in his hand, and that's the pen light that he took from Dr. Gordon, and there's blueprints for like his traps and stuff there. Like Zepp is there, he's creepy, and he's like, oh, he's a very special person, Dr. Gordon.
I hate that guy because he was also the worst in Lost. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but
he's definitely got a type.
Yeah, he's got that unlikable face.
So the cops come to check him out, but Lawrence's alibi that he was out having an affair checks out, and he agrees to hear the testimony of Amanda Young, who is the only known survivor of one of the traps. She's a former heroin addict who believes that the killer helped her in the same way that the killer clearly feels that he's showing people the error of their ways. We get to see her game, and she's hooked up to this reverse bear trap on her head, which, like I said, is one of the most iconic traps in the franchise. I think it's deserved that it's such an iconic trap because it's simple, it's intimidating. They've got this big honking thing right on their face, and you get to see what it can do on a dummy, which is, I think, a very effective way to be like, oh, here's what, like, you get to see it without seeing it right away.
Exactly. That was the thing. I was talking to my brother about this movie before, and he's not a horror fan at all. And he's like, I don't want to see somebody's face get ripped off with a reverse bear trap. I'm like, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't see that.
It's so great, sort of like seeing what it can do and having that threat hang over your head while she goes through it. It's really great. And while she's there doing her test, we see written on the back wall, they never draw attention to it, but just straight up on the back wall is the phrase, if you try to keep your life for yourself, you will lose it. But if you give up your life to me, you will find true life. This is big for spoilery reasons, for the franchise down the road. But basically, her game is that she's supposed to cut the key out of the stomach of a corpse in the cell. Only as she's doing it, she finds out that he's not actually dead. She stabs that fool a bunch of times. She really goes for it.
Yeah, no.
She rifles around. She gets the key out of what was actually pig guts. So I'm sure it was absolutely disgusting to be rooting around in there. But then Billy the Puppet rolls out. This is truly iconic. If anything is more iconic than actual John Kramer as the villain, it might be Billy the Puppet. People do just straight up call him Jigsaw sometimes.
Yeah. I didn't know his name was Billy the Puppet, to be completely transparent.
There you go. This is what I'm saying, is that people learn it, it's not, he's never like, this is my friend Billy the Puppet. But it's been really interesting sort of seeing his evolution throughout the years. And last night I watched the short film that they made to sort of pitch this movie to investors. It's like a 9-minute short, and in that 9-minute short, Billy the Puppet has a cute little bowler hat, and I think it's a mistake that they got rid of it.
That would make him a little too charming, I think.
Well, it certainly would, especially because he rolls on out on his little trike. Congratulations, you won the game.
Yeah, he's got his rosy cheeks.
Yeah.
That's the thing with dolls, especially in horror movies. It's it could be an adorable kid's toy, or it could be a terrifying thing that haunts your dreams forever.
Absolutely. But yeah, so basically she's just free to go, and she feels grateful to the person that she claims helped her.
Right.
And James Wan actually built Billy himself, which I think is fun.
With the budget that they had, of course.
Right, yeah, true. But I'm sure that he's absolutely psyched about hey, I built this thing with my bare hands and it turned into this huge icon.
Yeah.
It's literally his face is just clay, paper mache, and black ping pong balls with the irises painted in for the eyes, and paper towel rolls inside. So there you go. That's how to build a Billy.
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
That's right.
What I always say.
James Wan, he did Aquaman as well, so I'm sure. There you go. It all connects. In current day, we're done with this flashback for a moment. We see Allison and Diana, Dr. Gordon's family being held captive at home while their captor watches Adam and Lawrence through a hidden camera. So they see the camera there, and they're like, oh shit, like every angle has been pre-thought out. We can't break this camera. We can't break the glass that it's behind. It's why they can't break the chains. You know, we see this flashback again, and we see Gordon interacting with his family in a way that it's not ideal.
He's a jerk.
Yeah.
Dr. Jerk.
Yeah. He's sort of like a distracted dad. He's like, oh, I'll come tuck you in when I'm done with this paragraph. Like,
yeah. Also, you're a doctor. What are you writing? That was the thing that was weird to me.
I don't know.
Why are you writing stuff?
Patient reports? I don't know. Something.
This was before EMR, though, for sure.
And he's writing up like a love note to his intern that he's cheating with.
More realistic.
Yeah. And, you know, we see him clearly caring for his daughter. I do think that he genuinely does love his daughter. But as he walks out, his marriage itself seems to be pretty loveless. His wife asks how he can continue to pretend that he's happy. And he's like, I am happy. And she's like, no, this is bullshit. I wish that you would get angry because at least there'd be some passion in it. She's leaning into it.
Yeah.
Right after he leaves, the bad man, that quote unquote, the bad man that scared Gordon's daughter in the first place, why he had to go tuck her in, comes out. He did exist. He comes out, He ties up her and her mother. It's really sort of scary and also representative of that sort of distracted nature of his relationship with his daughter.
Right.
To be like, she was like, there's a guy in the room, check the room.
And so classic horror movie too. Like people never believe the kids.
Absolutely.
Never believe the kids.
Absolutely. It's when it's come up on the show that the parents like did believe the kids. It was like unique enough that I mentioned it. And I was like, holy shit, they actually believed that. He didn't actually check the room. Like literally the guy is just in the closet. Like it wouldn't have been that hard. But yeah, so he jumps out. He did exist. He ties him up, and there's some really nice sound editing here too, where he like listens to her heart rate while he's holding a gun to her head. And it like we hear it ourselves, and it like really it makes you very nervous for this little girl. Like it's very effective.
And you at this point you see that it's actually the orderly, right?
It's Zepp. Yes, we see him lumbering around the house and getting this little thrill out of scaring the little girl. And as far as we're concerned, we're like, okay, this is the guy.
He's the guy.
Yeah,
he's the weirdo. You're like, oh, he works at the hospital. That's how he got the pen light. Like,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. We're like, oh, it all comes together. You feel real smart. You're like, oh, I see how it all clicks. But the house is simultaneously being watched by Tap, who's gone off the deep end. He is
big time.
Yeah, he's like obsessed with the case. He's got his house is just wallpapered in photos and newspaper print. Like literally, when
Charlie Kelly, Pepe Sylvia.
Exactly, he's got boxes full of Lawrence Gordon. and he's
I've got boxes of Lawrence.
Yeah, he's on the hunt. He's watching the house. He's obsessed with the case, and we see some more flashbacks that show us how we got to this point. There's some really cool transitions here between scenes, like with the actual editing, like with the car rolling up sort of acts as the wipe. These neat transitions are something else that the franchise is known for. This persists throughout the whole thing. Saw 4 in particular is known for its sort of just like interesting transitions, but it's seen even like the seeds of it here. They do this a lot. There are several neat transitions that I just think are really cool. And it's something that's so typically ignored. They're just like, all right, fade to black, whatever. Just get us to the next thing. And just even putting the effort in to be like, oh, okay, like this will be interesting. The car will come across and that will bring in the new scene. It's just neat. It's cool.
And like shows that this movie to me, I think Saw and the franchise, the first Saw and the rest of the franchise get lumped into this like gore movie. And the reality is like, at least the first one, they tried to actually create a very good movie that was psychological thriller. There was gore, and like just actually like beautifully executed in terms of things like the transitions, the use of music, which is not used heavily throughout the movie. Yeah. But when they do use it, it seems very purposeful, or using the heartbeat or anything like that. It does create like a very well created movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, just the whole environment that you're in is just tense the whole way through by using all these little tricks to make it an immersive experience. It's the whole thing. And we see that Tap found Jigsaw's base using the video from Amanda's game. And it's in a warehouse on Stygian Street, which is fun to me because in addition to being the name of James Wan and Leigh Whannell's first short film, Stygian, Stygian also means dealing with the river Styx, which is obviously the boundary between the underworld and the world of the living in Greek mythology. So this warehouse and the street that it's on sort of representing this underworld where people go to die, basically, is, I think, it's just sort of some interesting symbology there. And I mean, is it a little corny to name your street something like that, where it's like maybe not the most realistic thing? Perhaps, but also, I don't give a shit. I think that's great.
It's something also like the normal watcher wouldn't pick up on.
Yeah.
Like I didn't pick up on it, but like for somebody who cares about horror and like different things, you're like, oh yeah, that's a cool shout out, like a little Easter egg kind of thing. There you
go. And again, sort of the thing that makes this movie bear rewatching, where you can come back and sort of see these things that you miss, and that sort of attention to detail, I think, is indicative of the care that went in. And Sing and Tap are so excited that they found this place that they go in with no warrant, no backup, and they navigate the warehouse. We see an extremely cute diorama of the bathroom that Gordon and Adam are in. This little diorama really cracks me up.
Which they probably used like in pre-production, right? Like they probably used that.
They were like, this is gonna be it. But like, I like to imagine Kramer there, like working with modeling clay for children, being like, and this will be Dr. Gordon, and I'll tie him to the chain.
Exactly.
And he like turns to Billy the puppet, and Billy's like, yes, it will be great. But yeah, it's a really tense scene besides this little diorama, and Jigsaw, he comes in, and they have found that there's a guy there about to be in a trap. Like, there's just a guy there with like a drill trap about to start.
Right.
And when they confront Jigsaw, he starts the trap up. And so they're worried about stopping that and saving this guy. And Jigsaw uses this to sort of make his escape.
Which in and of itself is a trap, right? Like detectives choose the life of this guy or choose catching me. And he's also hooded at this point. So you can't see. You kind of assume it's the orderly, even though the voice is different.
Right. And I mean, it would be easy enough for him to disguise his voice. He sees that they're there. So, and he like slashes Tap's throat.
Oh, reminding me of Taxi or Taxi Driver, where Robert De Niro had the gun that like he had come out like of that.
Yeah, his sleeve. Little sleeve gun.
The way the knife that came out, I was like, Taxi Driver.
It was also very like Assassin's Creed. He was like,
okay.
So it's, it's just a fun thing that you're like, all right, Jigsaw. I don't know. He was like, yes, I finally get to use this knife arm. I've been waiting for this moment. And they do save the guy, but as Sing is pursuing Jigsaw, his head gets just absolutely exploded by 4 shotguns rigged up to some tripwire. And originally, instead of shotguns, this was supposed to be like an iron cocoon that folded him up, but budgetary constraints got in the way, so
they're like, we'll home alone it.
Exactly, yeah. They're like, we can afford 4 shotguns. That's not building a whole fucking cocoon. Thank you. And so they slap those up. I do think that they're very satisfying still, having his head sort of blow up like this. And the iron cocoon did finally get used in Saw, the final chapter, so it did finally get its day in the sun.
When they had more money to play with, right?
Exactly. And so Tap is convinced that Lawrence is Jigsaw and that he never should have let him go, and that Sing's death is on his head, and that all of this, everything else is on Tap's shoulders. And so Tap has continued to stalk him, and sort of this obsessive nature is reflective of Jigsaw's own obsession as well. You sort of see how this obsession with saving everyone, whether it's through the traps and changing their worldview, or whether it's through hunting down this killer and sacrificing yourself in the process, it's just not feasible. It can't be done.
Right.
And you sort of see the way that it is self-destructive for both of these people. And we cut back to present day, and they decipher a clue back in the bath that Adam had found a photo of Lawrence's family tied up, and on the back of it, it was like, sometimes you see better in the dark or something like that.
Right.
He pulls it out of the wallet.
Threw his wallet over, and there's that hostage picture.
They decipher this clue, and they find an X marking the spot for the treasure in glow-in-the-dark paint, and it has a box containing 2 cigarettes, a lighter, and a one-way cell phone. And it also contains a secret note for the doctor with a clue that indicates to him that he should poison Adam with the cigarettes and the blood from the corpse in the middle. Again, this sort of toxic blood thing from the beginning comes up. And there's some irony here because we know later, you and I know that John Kramer is Jigsaw.
Right.
And that he's sort of prompted into this by his terminal cancer prognosis. At least in this point in the franchise, that's the only thing prompting him, although that gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the franchise goes. But his disdain for people dismissing the suffering of others is really underscored by Adam in this moment saying, give me that sweet, sweet cancer, while asking for the cigarettes. Plus, I mean, there's sort of this idea of like, oh, he has the toxic blood. And another big spoiler alert, if you're really upset, I guess jump ahead 30 seconds or whatever. But if we know that the corpse in the middle is Jigsaw, and so when he's talking about how he has toxic blood and whatever, and sometimes the only option is to just blow your head off, it's obviously also talking about the cancer that John has. So there's just some interesting irony going on there. And while he's fiddling with the phone, this also sparks a memory for Gordon of his abduction in the hospital parking garage by this pig-masked figure, the same mask that we saw in Jigsaw's warehouse in the previous flashback. The two of them, now he's remembering this, and he's like, oh, great, I have this plan of how we're going to fake Adam's death with this poison cigarette. But they shock Adam to test and make sure that he's actually dead, and he's not. It foils their brilliant plan. And
again, Dr. Gordon's like, come on, man. He's like, I just got electrocuted.
He's so mad. And he's like, what did you want me to do? And he's like, you think I was making it up to like fuck up your ruse?
Again, I'm not a Dr. Gordon fan.
Yeah, it's very funny. And Adam also in this moment remembers his kidnapping. The power was cut to his apartment while he was in his photo development room. And he walks out, and it's this super creepy scene where he's using the flash from his camera to illuminate what is supposed to be an apartment, but looks more like a pile of shit. It's like, this apartment that he lives in is disgusting.
He's a bit of a loner.
He finds and beats up Billy the puppet, who's laughing like, in my head when I picture like a Halloween ornament, it's like the little things dangling that have this same exact laugh that Billy has. And
that some factory created and continues to create for all time.
That's right. And he beats the crap out of Billy the puppet with this baseball bat. But after he does that, he's like, what? Like, that was obviously not actually what I was hearing, but someone put this there, and he gets attacked by the same pig masked figure. So the same person grabbed both of them. This mask is really like gross. It's like, I don't know why he was like, yeah, a pig with hair. Like, that's going to be my mask that I use to hide. Like, what a weird choice.
I feel like are pigs used in like satanic things?
I mean, maybe as like a sacrifice, but probably not more than like goats or cats and shit. Like, I don't know. I feel like John Kramer just has like a weird idea of fun. And he like, same thing with like the modeling clay where he was like, yeah, like I'm going to sew some hair into this pig mask. Like, he's just a weird guy.
Yeah. I mean, could be because like he could have some brain issues with the tumor, like pressing on different parts of his brain.
Could be.
You never know.
Back in the bathroom, though, Gordon receives a phone call on this phone. So they figure out it was a one-way phone. And he gets a phone call from his daughter and his wife, who tell him not to trust Adam, that Adam is lying and he's known who Gordon was the whole time. Great
Such a
reveal.
Dick, that Adam.
Oh, yeah. And it's so fun. And Adam admits that he's been following Lawrence and taking photos of him having this affair with one of his med students. Many of the photos are also in the bag that held the hacksaws, and he sort of uses this as proof. But we see that from one of his visits to this med student, that this is the reason that Lawrence is being tested as far as Jigsaw is concerned. And when Adam describes the man who hired him, we assume that it's going to be part of this game and that Adam was actually in on it the whole time. But Lawrence realizes from the description that it's actually Detective Tapp who was paying him to follow him. And you're like, oh my God, it was Tapp all along.
Which is great that this movie, like, literally all the biggest twists of it happen in probably the last, like, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That it's just like, twist, twist, twist. You're like,
They really
what?
keep you guessing. Absolutely. And Adam, in this pile of photos, finds a photo that he didn't take of a man staring out a window of Lawrence's house. And this is when Lawrence identifies him as Zepp Hindle, the orderly from the hospital. And the clock strikes 6. This is it. The moment has arrived, and Lawrence still hasn't managed to kill Adam. So Zepp moves in. He goes to kill Allison and Diana. But Allison, good for her, manages to free herself. And I was like, fuck yeah, Allison, get that gun out of his hand. And
yeah, she fucking goes for it.
yeah, she gets the jump on him. She fights Zepp for his gun, and the struggle and the gun going off in this fight attracts Tapp's attention from his vantage point. So turns out that his stalking actually did have some benefit for them.
Benefit?
Yeah. And he saves Allison and Diana. And he rushes in, he saves them, and he chases Zepp to the sewer where he's shot in the chest after fighting with Zepp. And he collapses to the ground and he dies there. And it like really shocked me in this moment. Yeah. I remember seeing it for the first time and like really feeling like this character. So he actually does persist in like flashbacks in other Saw movies. But like, I was like, this is the guy, like this member of the police force, and like seeing his obsession is going to be like what we're going to follow the whole time in sequels and stuff. And so when they killed him, it took me by surprise.
Or at least be the good guy that, like, I feel like so many horror movies, right, like have that, we can talk about the ending, but like have that very, very like, and this is the end.
Right.
And like
a
the fact
bow,
that the good guy didn't win, right? Like he's dead and now this guy is charging somewhere. You're like, wait, what?
Absolutely. And like you said, all these twists are happening, but so many things are sort of happening at once that it really like you're so amped up in these last couple minutes where Lawrence is only aware of like gunshots and screaming because the phone gets like kicked away. And so he is shocked and he loses reach of the cell phone. So even when they're trying to call him back to be like, hey, honey, we're okay. Like, he can't reach it. And so he, in desperation, 6 o'clock has already come. He thinks that they might be dead. He still goes for it. And so we see that at least there was some love for his family actually there. He does take this saw and he saws off his foot, and it is gruesome. Like, they do a really good job with the editing of sort of, they show enough where you're like, oh shit, I'm seeing him saw off his leg, and then cutting away and just seeing like Adam like retching, being like, this is absolutely horrific. It's really great. I love the way they handle this. It's so
and
tense.
Still not as gruesome as 127 hours or whatever that James Franco movie was where he cut off his arm. Exactly.
It's so funny how it's like, it's sort of humble beginnings, but this is it. This is the moment that sort of began a subgenre. Like when people look back and they're like, well, where did this sort of like quote unquote torture porn subgenre come from? It's like, this is pretty much the moment, this moment of him cutting off his foot. And it's sort of incredible the amount of influence that this specific scene really had. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's really cool. And he saws off his foot and he does grab the corpse's revolver and he loads his bullet and he shoots at him, blat, blat. Except it's only one blat because he only has one bullet. And Zepp enters the bathroom too. And he's there to kill Lawrence according to the rules. But Gordon, this is another twist. Because he was a doctor, he knew where to shoot Adam. And he shot him in the shoulder. So Adam actually survived. And so when Zepp comes in to kill Lawrence, Adam gets the drop on Zepp before just bashing his head in with the toilet tank lid. So gross, the like squelching noises and stuff that it makes.
But like so much rage and hatred for the person that like put them through this, or
very cathartic.
Who they think put them through this.
Exactly, yeah. It's this real catharsis moment. It's straight up just a garbage bag full of fake blood is how they did this like noise and effect. Yeah. And so that's why when there's blood like splashing all over him and it's making that gross squelching noise, it's like straight up just a garbage bag with blood. And so Lawrence, he is missing a foot, but he crawls out of the room.
And not looking good either.
No.
He's white
Pale,
at this point.
pale as a damn ghost. And he is crusty on the mouth too. Like
already it's real bad.
It's not a good look. But he thinks he's gonna crawl all the way out of there and he's gonna get help. And Adam searches Zepp's body for a key because he thinks that this is sort of the ultimate figure here. And he finds another tape instead of a key that reveals that Zepp was another victim following.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh my God, it blew my mind. He was following the rules to obtain an antidote for a slow acting poison that he was given.
Yeah.
And as the tape ends, the corpse from the middle rises. Holy shit, what a shock.
With, like, great music.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely spectacular. And he reveals himself. He, pulls off some of the makeup. He cleans his face off, and he reveals himself as the man that Dr. Gordon was treating, John Kramer, the real Jigsaw killer. He tells Adam that the key to his chain was in the bathtub. We realize this is the chain that Adam kicked down the drain when he first woke up. And there's this really great moment where, in his rage, Adam, tries to shoot him. So, and you just hear the clicking of the...
because there's nothing.
Oh, man, it's so good. And old Jiggy shocks him with the remote as one final kick in the ribs there. And John shuts off the light. John Kramer, he shuts off the light and he yells, "Game over!" before sealing the door and leaving Adam to die, screaming, which persists into the end credits.
Yeah.
Super effective. I love that outro. I think it's so, so good.
I think the thing for me, and reflecting on this movie, that I will like a horror movie up until the very end, and then the end will just ruin the rest of the movie for me because the way that they end it or the way they try it. And I thought this movie stayed so true to the rest of the movie that it was a satisfying ending, that Adam is in no better a position than he was in, actually worse, from the beginning of the movie now. And it just creates this true horror to the viewer of nothing's resolved. People are dead. The only good thing is that the doctor's wife and daughter survived. That's the only positive.
This level of ambiguity where you're well, maybe he can crawl out and maybe they can get help, but deep down that they are fucked.
Well, and even if the doctor made it, crawling through the sewer.
Right, which we find out
walking
he
right
does.
behind him, so he's going to finish him off.
Well, spoiler alert for way down the road, we find out that Dr. Gordon actually is involved in Jigsaw's plans.
Ooh.
Yeah, he cauterizes the wound and he wakes up. It's a whole big thing, but we're not talking about those later ones. As in the canon of this one, Dr. Gordon just crawls out and probably dead. And I want to talk about this reveal that the corpse is Jigsaw, because that's sort of foreshadowed when they pull this corpse isn't a corpse thing in Amanda's trap.
Yeah.
And this truly sent me down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
He lies about being a corpse, or about a corpse being alive twice. And I started to think about, why would he lie to Amanda if he's trying to change her worldview? Because, how can it be effective for her if she starts from a faulty premise and only finds out that she's actually killing someone in or after the act? So I was like, okay, there's a level of it working as a visual metaphor where it's everyone who doesn't appreciate life is just a walking corpse, man. But I think it also actually reveals a lot to me about who John Kramer really is. Because this is going to sound like some tinfoil shit, I'm just ranting about nothing. But
that's okay.
I started thinking about this, and he claims that he's trying to wake people up. This is explored throughout the entire franchise. He says Lawrence himself is described by his wife as passionless. Amanda does drugs to escape from reality. Paul tries to kill himself and sacrifice. He give up his life to escape from it.
Right.
But this is also really directly addressed when he says that Adam is angry but apathetic. Mm-hmm. And it's this apathy, I think, is what Jigsaw resents. And rather than the sort of passive nihilism that is demonstrated by his victims in this sort of well, nothing matters, so I'm going to just do drugs or I'm going to sit in my own filth. He's more of an active nihilist where he ascribes his own self-destructive nature and the selfishness to the world, and then deems that unacceptable and sort of like furthers his own self-destruction, trying to tear down this world state that reflects himself. And when Lawrence points out how carefully each trap is planned, he's like pointing out that Jigsaw doesn't leave room for his subjects to value their lives so much that they like find alternative ways to solve the trap. He doesn't allow for mistakes made by sheer virtue of being human, that humanity is supposed to be what he's celebrating. And this obsessive attachment that's also reflected in Tap, that to this idea that people are selfish and destructive, is what's leading him to this point. And so the individuals, I don't think, are really the test subject. Humanity is, over and over again. And so each time someone fails, it just keeps Jigsaw's feedback loop going, where he lets them be human, accounts for it, and then lets that be the thing that dooms them. I genuinely think that he's so deranged that he is lying to himself about his own motivations, because forcing someone to shoot two other people to save their own life is not teaching them to value life. Right. And like he's willing to lie.
It's a control thing.
Right.
It's like he doesn't actually pull the trigger on anyone.
Right. And he manipulates these people in such a way where like he lies to Amanda about the body in the same sentence that he says, "No, I am not lying." And sort of this sheer psychopathy of being able to like do that and manipulate this situation. And the idea that some of his victims are used purely as sacrifice, I think that Gordon's wife and child, who, as far as we're aware, have no difficulty valuing their lives, is all.
And Adam just being a photographer and like trying to make money, like he didn't do anything.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, you're a voyeur," and it's like, well, he's doing his job, and it's just all of this. I think is indicative of this underlying discord between his motivation that he claims and the actual truth, especially when his methods don't work. Nobody actually changes. Amanda, who it supposedly worked on in this one, is tested again in 3, and she fails. And she says nobody is reborn. And so basically, his values that he claims to have are not possible in the world as it is. And he knows this deep down. So he's not actually trying to change people's minds. He's just trying to tear down sort of the world that he sees as unacceptable. And his inflexibility in these ideals is what caused him to try and get to this point, especially starting with the people within direct reach of John Kramer. These are the reasons why it's actually these people, not because, oh, he's cheating on his wife, not because, oh, he's a photographer and so there's this level of voyeurism. It's just John Kramer is angry, and when he sees something that reflects his own flaws, egotistical, lacking in sympathy, brutal, sadistic, it makes these sort of challenges for the other people so much more interesting, because it's really like he's challenging himself and humanity. And like it also makes later in 6, part of the reason why I think that part 6 is so interesting is because it deals with like the person in the game is a health insurance executive, and there's this level of deciding who lives and dies, and that like again that reflective nature of what Jigsaw does and what the victim is doing. Right. It's much more tangible and direct, I think, in Saw 6, where it is like genuinely making decisions about who gets to have their insurance money and stuff. Yeah, I just think that all of this sort of lying to himself, it just makes him so psychotic to me, and it makes this sort of exploration of his obsession so much more powerful. You know, everything in this movie and in the franchise itself has this sort of taint of obsession about it. Not even just in the movies, in like the video games of Saw, you play as Detective Tapp's son in the second one, who he has an obsessive grudge against his dad for losing his mind about this case. Like he like resents him for being a bad dad because of it, as well as all the other people affected by that obsession, and seeing sort of the way that it ripples out and like the negative self-destructive impact of this obsession, and also how it sort of permeates out from your own life. Yeah. To me, it just makes him such an interesting killer compared to someone who's just like I'm gonna slash you with this knife. Like there's so much more going on under the surface, I think, for John Kramer, that it's just really great. I'm curious what you think about sort of the quote unquote ethics of Jigsaw and his claim that he's doing this for people's own good.
Sure. I mean, like, realistically, he's a sociopath at least.
Sure.
And again, like, reading, about Ted Bundy or these different people who are killers and serial killers, in their mind, they're maybe not Ted Bundy, but like in their mind, they're doing something that they see as right. And they can't. And I think the thing that's particularly interesting about Jigsaw is that, like, he can say his hands are clean in that he's not actually the one killing anybody. He's the one kidnapping people, but, like, it's all choices that they're making on their own. So in his own twisted mind, he's being like, well, I gave them options. This is what they chose.
Right.
Which, it feels very godlike. It feels very, like, Charles Manson-y, like, cult kind of mentality of, I'm at a higher plane than you, I get this more than you, when the reality of the situation is, like, no, you're a severely mentally ill person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whose obsession and, like, perfectionism, like, makes it very difficult for people to track or arrest you. And, like, that's the thing. Like, as much as people look at this movie and they're like, it's a gory movie, yes, that's an element of it. But in so many other ways, like, it is a psychological movie. You're looking at it in every different angle from all these different people, all these different perspectives of the victim, of who you think is the killer for a while. And then you realize he's also a victim in this whole scenario.
Right.
And then really in this film, you don't get too much behind the mind of Jigsaw. I'm sure later in the series you do. But yeah, it's just like that God complex of, I'm right. And you're failing this because you're the problem, not me.
Definitely has this sort of holier than thou element to it, for sure. So I mean, I'm sure that this interesting nature of him being this way will play into it, but why don't we get to the part now where we summarize why this is the best horror movie ever made. So I'll let you start us off.
So, I mean, I think I kind of spoiled it in the beginning, but like a couple of things. Obviously, the fact that this franchise turned from one movie into 7 or 8, and apparently there's talks that there's going to be new movies coming out this fall, kind of related to it. Like,
well, that got pushed back. It's now like a year away.
Oh, well, thanks, COVID.
Damn you!
So, I mean, like, the fact, the longevity of it, right? Like, things don't, like, I watched one of the Fast and Furious movies and I was like, I do not get this movie. And, like, some of my friends are like, oh, you just have to, like, know what kind of movie it is and appreciate it for that. But the longevity of it, the fact that, like, we literally have rooms that people pay to play escape rooms. I remember computer games too, like escape room computer games that I played probably in like middle school or high school, that like there's this fear that every person has, I think, of like being trapped and not being in charge of your own decisions. And this movie just like plays so much on that, while also taking you through this twisty turny kind of mystery of like who's actually responsible, what's actually going to happen, in a way that's not jump scare. It's gory, but again, like this movie to me, like rewatching it, I'm like, it's not as gory as, you know, some other movies that I've watched.
Yeah, not even just movies further down the Saw franchise, but like all over the place. There, I mean, even certain effects like in Midsummer, like when the guy's head gets like smashed
brutal.
In. That's way gorier than anything that's in this movie.
Yeah. So for me, that's why it's a movie that you could go back to if like you never watched before and it still holds up. It's not dated. It had a serious franchise after it. And just the fact that like it actually has a big cultural impact to things that we do.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree. To me, this is the best horror movie ever made because when you really boil it down, like you said, you get this great mystery and you get this element of what would I do? Mm-hmm. It's so easy to put yourself in the shoes of these victims and be like, if I had to saw my foot off, would I do it? If I had to navigate this razor wire, would I do it? If I had to stab this person who's laying here paralyzed in order to save my own life, would I do it? It's so simple, but it's such a great way to hook the audience member into the movie. And it does all of this pretty much just from a dirty bathroom set. It's simple, it's cool, it has this great aesthetic that really kicked off its own thing. This sort of industrial, filthy like aesthetic was all over all of the imitators that followed this movie. Like you said, it has a huge, huge cultural impact. It has some fun writing. It has a great premise. The performances are fun, and there are some actors who you're like, oh shit, Tobin Bell. Oh shit, Danny Glover. Like, Carrie Elwes is in it. It's these people who you're having fun watching it go through this situation because you know it's fake, but like there is, like you said, that element of it being close enough to what could happen.
Yeah.
There's so many people where it's like, this could just be an actual serial killer that I haven't heard of yet. Like, this could be happening in a small town somewhere in the Midwest. Like, there's that layer of, because it's so based in reality, it's so much scarier on just a core level than something that you're not positive about. Because it deals with just a person and his deranged mind and his misguided ethics, it becomes so much more grounded. And all that on such a small budget. There's just so much passion, so much passion that pulled this thing across the finish line. And to me, that's what makes this the best horror movie ever made. Laura, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was an absolute blast. I know that you said that you're still sort of putting your stuff together and that you don't really have any plugs, but I at least want to offer you a chance to shout something out that you're enjoying. If you don't have, and plus, if you have any socials or anything, you can feel free to shout those out too.
No, that's quite all right. I'm not an Instagram influencer or a TikToker yet. Anything that I'm enjoying. So I do really like reality TV, which is kind of interesting, like liking horror and then liking something as stupid as
especially this one where he's like, when they see themselves on the camera and he's like, oh, it's a reality TV show.
I've been going back to some older reality TV shows. I started watching Flavor of Love with Flavor Flav, which is on Hulu. And so it's kind of inspiring. My one friend and I are thinking of starting like a reality TV show podcast. So we'll see if anything comes of it.
There you go.
Highly recommend going back and watching those classic reality shows.
Keep an eye out for Laura's future reality TV show podcast. I'm sure it will be great. And as far as my plugs, you can check out the new website, Little Horror PHL, although by the time that this comes out, it won't really be new anymore. Check out the website anyway. You can listen to the show right on there if for some reason you don't feel like listening to it on a podcast app, but also it has links to all the social places. You can find the store on there as well if you feel like buying some fun merch. But you can also find me on Twitter at Little Horror PHL. That username extends to all the other social platforms, but really we're mostly on Twitter. So reach out to us on there. And I personally am on Twitter at GergHef if you feel like listening to me talk about things that are not exclusively horror. So there's those places. That's pretty much it. Laura, thank you again, and thanks everyone for listening. Bye. Oh, wait. Also, leave a rating and a review. Okay, bye.